Tabletopped will start after the following messages.
Are you looking for something comfortable to wear and keep your brain warm while playing tabletop games? Daily Dose of Yarn makes handmade, customized beanies for all of your style and comfort needs. She can even help you with a custom beanie to represent your favorite character. Check out Daily Dose of Yarn on Instagram and Etsy to order your new favorite beanie today.
Do you like nerdy stuff? Of course you do. Want to see someone make that stuff, but smaller? Sculpting Minis, tabletop terrain, props, puppets, and tutorials, a crafting channel for all things nerdy. Join me over on YouTube at Niche Crafts, where I make stuff about stuff.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Tabletop. My name is Nick Perrin, your host, and I am so excited to get to today's episode. But first, if you can go to our website, tabletoppedpod.com, we have a whole bunch of stuff happening there. We have a Discord server that you can join for free where you can talk to us. We have our contact form if you wanted to suggest new ideas for episodes. And of course, we have our Patreon. You can also go to patreon.com/tabletopped. That is where you can support the show financially. If you don't want to do any of that, that is totally fine. I appreciate you just for listening. But if you could go down into your podcast app and write a review, it only takes about a minute. It's free and it really helps out the show. Thanks everyone for being a listener to Tabletopped, and today's show is awesome, so let's get to it.
Welcome back to another episode of Tabletop. Today we are talking about Dragonlance. That's right, we are returning to the land of dragons and lances and red wizards and other things. And obviously, I'm not the expert, so I brought one in to talk to me today. Who are you?
I am Daniel. I'll be playing the expert class in this interview today.
Excellent. And then we also brought someone in who has done some of these module reviews with me before. Who are you?
Hi, I'm Shade. I'll be playing the generalist.
Excellent. Now, as you all know, we have already talked about the setting of Dragonlance a few months ago with Daniel. We found out it is his favorite setting. He is excited to talk about this because Wizards has released a new Dragonlance setting module. So, Daniel, can you give us a quick once-over of what Wizards has released? Is it just like the setting outline, or is it an adventure? What is it?
So what it is, Nicholas, is it's an adventure that takes place in the Dragonlance campaign setting that gets you right into the heart of a game without a lot of build-up as like pages wasted on world building and whatnot. They're just like, here's some stuff, go.
Great.
Campaign setting was released for 3rd edition several years ago, and then I believe 4th got missed completely.
Yeah.
And I would say this is for 5th, but it's also like right on the cusp of one D&D.
Yeah.
D&D
Wait, so
next.
do you think that, or as you've read through it, is one D&D like, is it built for one D&D or is it built for 5th edition?
Well, I don't really know what the rules are going to look like for one D&D not being out yet, but I don't think they're going to do any big changes as far as like mechanics and whatnot, because they're trying to keep all the digital books now relevant as far as I understand.
Yeah.
The machinations of wizards living on the coast.
That's what their claim is. We'll see. But generally speaking, the good thing about adventures and setting books, which this really is at its heart, they can be applied. I mean, I'm still using 2nd edition stuff to this day if I want for some setting and adventure details.
Yeah, I'm interested in that too, because it feels like, yes, the Wizards design team wants to keep all of the old stuff active and ready, but from what I've heard from the playtests and stuff, it seems like they're really fundamentally changing how certain classes work, like the feats and no racial traits and all that kind of stuff. I wonder if
there's a lot of that. It looks built into the character options.
Oh, yeah?
In the first chapter.
That's awesome. Cool. So I'm looking at you right now, and you're not smiling.
I've never smiled a day in my life.
So I know that you're serious about Dragonlance, but what what was your feeling on it? Did it still feel Dragonlance-y? Were there dragons? Were there wizards? Were there knights?
Oh my god, there were so many dragons. That's actually a lie. There were knights and there were wizards. There was a death dragon. There were a lot of draconians, which are what's the word you want to use? Bastardization of the metallic dragons, corrupted by Takisis's dark magic.
Should we put I mean, if you're listening to this, obviously, if you're going to be a player in this campaign, spoiler warnings. Just heads up.
Well, I mean, the draconians have been in the books since the 80s. So.
Yeah, but it occurs to me, since this is an adventure, just a heads
I'm not
up.
going to... Okay. Yeah, you know what? Tag it. Hashtag.
Yeah.
Double the fingers.
I like to get ahead of it.
Spoilers, maybe. We're gonna I shied away from getting too deep into like the adventure stuff and just looked at sort of like the character options and setting lore that was there, because I figure I'm not gonna tell you about the adventure. You play it. Don't waste my time.
But so, like, when we did Spelljammer, Tim and Shade were on that one, and they were talking about the setting, and they were sort of like, this is something for Spelljammer fans, but new people, it felt like, it's not the best, it's not the worst, it's just sort of like in the middle. It didn't give you a lot of help with how to play a Spelljammer campaign. It just sort of outlined what it was. Is Dragonlance different? Do you feel like Dragonlance is like, this is Dragonlance,
Well, Dragonlance is your typical medieval fantasy, so it doesn't need a lot of help, a lot of guidelines. It's people and magic fighting dragons and the forces of evil. So you don't really need a lot of help to get into Dragonlance, which is one of the 3 reasons I'll say Dragonlance is better than Spelljammers. But no, yeah, it doesn't do a lot of hand-holding because it doesn't need to do it.
Gotcha.
From what I read of this, I will say this, for me, was a little bit of a more enjoyable read in some regards, because I agree there isn't too much that I'm worried about, like, oh, hey, mechanically, how does this work or that work? And the stuff that is there is pretty straightforward. There are a couple of things, and there's actually something that is essentially just a Spelljammer in this ship, for what it's worth. It's a flying fortress. And and that, I mean, the mechanically, it's just a spelljamming ship. From my read of it.
Does it tell you, because as I understand it, riding dragons is a huge part of Dragonlance, being a dragon rider and killing other dragon people?
Well, now see, Nick, that depends entirely.
Whoa, Daniel just gave me such a you pleb face.
on which chronicle that you're reading. Yes, usually someone will mount a dragon and ride it into battle.
Daniel, this is a PG-13 podcast.
Right.
Can you not bring us into this perverted section?
I refuse to be the one blamed for that.
All right, so we're riding dragons. Does it give you a vehicle combat sort of way to do that? Or does
but it does give you the magical construct of the Dragonlance.
Gotcha.
The weapons that you would wield on the back of a dragon that really only work if you're riding a dragon, just because of how they're built. They don't really work on horseback or otherwise. They need the full weight of a dragon behind them.
I don't think that this particular Dragonlance requires a dragon to be.
Then it's wrong.
Yeah, just from what I recall, good audio there, Shade. You can just use this item, and it just happens to hurt dragons more.
Yeah. So it does look like text as written that you don't need you don't have to be riding a dragon to make them work. But why would you not? Really? If you have the choice to ride a dragon or not ride a dragon, would you really choose to use it on a horse?
Yeah.
Or a basilisk or whatever.
I mean, if they're super powerful, probably.
I mean, well, it looks like these are just regular lances and the +3 to dragons.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like a fun sort of, hey, here's this powerful weapon in these circumstances. Because a lot of D&D games have that trouble with. This is a powerful magical item always. but fine-tuning things to certain circumstances or situations does make it a lot more inviting to throw those powerful artifacts.
Yeah, we've talked about that previous on like building weapons and stuff, making it so it's
Yeah.
like this is a +3 on whatever the big bad evil thing is.
Exactly. That way it's not a +3 in general, but
I'm gonna be honest. So far, this doesn't sound so different from like Faerun. Like what am I being offered here? Why would I buy this book? You have not sold me on this book yet.
listen, it's got dragons that you ride.
I
Also, the War of the Lance is what you're playing for. So Faerun has all of its like god shenanigans and Drit Stewardens coming up from the Underdeep. With the Dragonlance, and I'll say that it has one of like those tropes in it that I kind of don't enjoy, but I've always just sort of like taken as part of my Dragonlance medicine.
Okay.
Is the first Chronicles, and you know what? Just go ahead and at me. I don't care. I know it's like they have sagas, chronicles, and histories. I don't know which goes to which. But in the Dragons of the Autumn Twilight and its 2 sequels, you're dealing with the War of the Lance as it happens.
Yeah.
And there's always talk of the War of the Dragons, which was in the histories with Huma, who was like one of the champions who forged the Dragonlances, and Solomus, who was the
He was
head
super
of
solemn.
the. Well, technically, yeah, like you're not wrong. But he forged the Knights of Solamnia. Solamnia?
I think it's
why did I
salami.
try to practice the punctuation? You
So
know,
the
I can't
Knights
even
of
say
Salami come in.
punctuation, so it doesn't really.
The
It's
Dragonlance is just a really long stick of pepperoni.
It's yeah, okay. It's like
This
a
is the
little-
world I want to live in.
It's like we're gonna retake a crown of candy and make it all meat-based dragon fights.
A lance of salami.
A lance of salami. We did it. Dimension 20. We can be a season writer.
oh
It's
boy.
Oh god.
at us.
Daniel's shooting a shot.
When an opportunity arises, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
That's so true. That's so true. And in this case, 100% of the shots you do take.
No, I'm sure Brandon Lee Mulligan listens to this podcast every Monday.
Yeah.
For our insight into salami-based settings.
Lance.
Salami-based dragon settings, yes.
The other big thing in this, because I mean, that just to steer us back
get
some
us
direction,
back on track.
is like for me the big selling point of this is the war.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Yeah, I know,
before
I know.
got distracted.
So I'm just gonna getting us back onto that because riding the dragons, things like that, that's really fun and cool and all that. But the war itself is the cool thing in this book for me because the structure of this is well done. I think wars. I mean, TTRPGs are born out of war games and storytelling, and this kind of takes half of that, the war element, and puts your party into it in a way that still focuses on the story. So all these randomized events can happen. Like your party can be making their way through this war-torn area, and ballista will just like rain down upon them that wasn't aimed at them, but they're in
It's
the
just
area.
like stray mortar shells.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
exactly, that kind of thing. And I think that's a lot of fun, and this book has done a pretty good job of putting that together.
Wait, so is this a kind of a prequel to the Dragonlance setting because it is about the War of Dragons?
No, this is about the War of the Lance.
Okay, great.
The one
Cool.
the novels take place in, and it starts you off there. And as I was saying earlier, like one of the things that it does is it revisits this war from many different angles, and has the device of time journeying. So a lot of the novels just replay the events of the War of the Lance or the War of the Dragons, which allows you to sort of, if you wanted to add that and incorporate it, let you play maybe after the war, having someone travel back in time to sort of like try to right
To fix
wrongs
stuff,
and
yeah.
fix things that had gone on. Because Achesis is always stealing the world and moving it around the multiverse to hide it from the other gods. There's a lot of time traveling with the device of time journeying. And another thing that you don't
Which
get
is something
in other
you've
settings.
been very interested in with one of your upcoming settings. Were you reading it and you're like, oh shit, I am going to use any of this stuff, or was it helpful in that way if people are interested in a time travel campaign?
If you're like, it doesn't get into it too much in this book. But if you want to learn more about it, the novels, the newest ones, I believe it's called Dragons of Deceit.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Margaret West, I don't remember the title of your last book that I read, but it actually sends characters back in time.
Gotcha.
And restarts a bunch of stuff. I don't know what's going to happen there. 6th edition for Dragonlance settings. Just reset the timeline. But yeah, a lot of interesting stuff to bring you into this setting versus the Forgotten Realms. Also, Kinder, the best fictional race or species ever. They're just a bunch of like little children beings who naturally, they don't steal, but things just find their way into their pockets.
Yeah.
Completely unbeknownst to the Kinder themselves that they ever collected them.
Let me put another opinion on that. I mean, in this book, they're fine. They appeal to me more, but like historically, Kinder, not a fan, because they were the kind of thing in like older editions of D&D where people would play them, and it's like, but somehow that there was always the character that was the thief that would steal everything from the party and be the most just frustrating.
Well, that's not an objection to the race. That's an objection to the people that you're playing with.
I mean, yes, it is, but also it was the one they all gravitated towards. So I had I just didn't really enjoy it.
Kinder, great. Your friends, the worst.
Hey, worth saying that. Let's call it species now, because that's where D&D is moving towards.
Oh, yeah.
I know it says race in the book, but let's just move to species.
Yeah, that's a big sort of, not really, like you said, pertinent to this release, but they, for those who don't know, are getting rid of racial abilities in D&D and are now moving towards species as a general term, but also it sounds like they're moving towards feats and stuff to give you that kind of customization.
There's a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mostly wanted to say that because I almost said, yes, you're right, I don't like that particular species, and then thought, I want to say species.
Yep.
I've always thought species just made more sense, just in general anyway, as a hobbyist biologist.
So
one thing I'm interested in, because this kind of dovetails into that nicely, is that in some of the other kind of setting guides that have been released, the big sort of thing that we've been given from Wizards has been species. It has been, in Spelljammer, like a little bit of a new sort of mechanic when it came to Spelljammers, and a little bit of magic that came along with that. But also, sometimes they give new feats, sometimes they give new other stuff like that. So what are we getting in that angle, like playable, like what will players be able to customize their characters with out of this book?
The two biggies are playing as the Knights of Solamnia.
Okay.
Which is it's a background choice, which gives you access into the knighthood, and then you collect feats as you level up and move around in the ranks there.
Does it change? You say collect feats. Does that mean it just has more feats as options when you
it has particular feats to the knights?
Gotcha.
So you have to have the Knights of Solamnia background as a prerequisite. And then the lunar spellcasting subclass.
Yeah, sorcerer.
Is it for the sorcerer specifically?
Yep.
Okay.
Is
I know
that,
wizards are also like their whole big thing in that
there's
setting.
like red and white wizards, right?
Red, white, and black, based on the 3 moons of magic.
Gotcha.
Of Kryn. So I'm going to learn you stuff today.
But so some of those, and of course the Kinder as well. Those are the big player items, along with a few magic items like that Flying Fortress I mentioned, the Dragonlance itself, and a few other fun things. I wanted to actually talk about one of the particular feats with the Knights of Solamnia, and that is, so like you said, this is a this is a background that you can take, and there's nothing that really prohibits you from taking this background. You get a first level feat with this background as well, which is a thing that Wizards is moving towards in general. But the Knight of Solamnia offers, what is it?
Is it the advantage thing?
Yeah, it's this one that gives you advantage, and I just had some visceral reactions to it.
I have less of a reaction to it than you, because for the listener, there is a specific feat you can take with that background that gives you a 1 attack per turn, which is with advantage. And I think that that's okay, because even if you're a warrior with multi-attack, it just means that one attack of your multi-attack can have advantage. Yeah. And the big thing that you guys were worried about is with rogues, but I still think that rogues are usually going to get, their sneak attack off once per turn anyway. So,
well, here's kind of where I mean, you're not wrong, but here's what I'm. So it's this feat called the Squire of Solamnia. Your training in the ways of the Knights of Solamnia grants you these benefits. Mount up. Mounting or dismounting costs you only 5 feet of movement. I like that. That's fun. That's cool. It's flavorful for a knight character. And then it gives you precise strike. Once per turn, when you make a weapon attack roll against a creature, you can cause the attack roll to have advantage. If the attack hits, you roll a d8 and add the number rolled as a bonus to the attack's damage. You can use this benefit a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, but a use is expended only if the attack hits. You regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. My big issue with this is that little point right there. I think that, especially in 5e, there is kind of a use it, you lose it mentality. I am all for empowering I'm all for empowering marshals, and this does do that. Notably, it only empowers those who use a weapon attack. So unarmed strikes, well, I guess some technically qualify for that, but regardless, but this is there's no disadvantage to this is a must-have for everyone. If you're not taking this, then you are.
Well, to be fair, you have to take the knight background, and you have to be playing in a Dragonlance campaign.
Yes. Yeah, I do get that, but I could see plenty of tables being like, well, I mean, why, orcs aren't like this in Dragonlance, and you're going to let me play an orc in our Dragonlance game. Why can't I take this Dragonlance thing into our non-Dragonlance
see, now
game?
you're getting into like a weird situation, because the DM can, of course, allow anything that they want to.
Of course.
So saying what a DM could do, but as written in the book, there's a lot of prerequisites that you have to set up. Because if you're playing a Knight of Solamnia, you're also taking the Oath and the Measure, and you got to play a very specific way to keep that. So I don't think it's as simple as, I have to take this. I don't think a lot of people are going to want to deal with the sort of role-playing guidelines as often as you think.
That's a good point. Can we talk more about those guidelines? Because maybe I'm just not...
The Oath and the Measure?
Yeah, let's talk about this.
All right. Well, it's very simple, the Oath. My honor is my life. You just have to do what's good, help others, put yourself in harm's way.
Yeah.
Always be...
Gotta be the chivalrous knight.
Yeah, and then the Measure is basically... I don't know if you ever read the Bible, but basically like Leviticus, and it's like 38 pages of just rules on how you should live your life. It goes into like very minutia. Like I think a couple of things it talks about is like how to like conduct yourself at dinner, how to like saddle and mount a horse, and just basically like every part of your life is dictated by the Measure, and you have to like basically have it memorized if you're going to be a knight.
How do they make that accessible to players? Like, do players have to like memorize all of these tenets, or is it more
like it's literally like volumes? No one's gonna have to memorize that. You're not actually raised as a knight, but you do have to be like, you're not being very knightly, and then that would have all sorts of repercussions that you could play with, like being kicked out of the order, having your like wealth and property seized.
So how is the Measure kind of portrayed mechanically in the book? Is there like specific measures that you have to?
No, there's no mechanical order of the measures.
Gotcha.
They're just sort of, it's just a DM sort of way to be like, okay, this is
a little much,
and that's where I kind of get into the, again, there's no mechanics behind it. Why wouldn't I take this?
Well, this is an interesting thing. So I just got back from PAX Unplugged, and there was a great panel by one of the developers in 2K Games, and they were talking about how there is a sort of quadrant system when it comes to mechanics, and there is the cool and strong mechanics, there is the uncool and strong mechanics, there's the cool and weak mechanics, and there is the uncool and weak mechanics. And the only one you really don't want in your game is the uncool and strong, because then everyone's not having fun, but they feel like they have to take this thing.
And that's where I kind of feel this is personally.
Yeah, but I feel like you don't have to take it in D&D, right? Because it's not like right now unless in Dragonlance there is a feeling that monsters get buffed to a crazy degree where you are now going to have to be like, okay, if we don't take this, we will not be competitive within the game.
Well, also you have to think about it like this. In the game, if you're setting up your party, the Knights of Solamnia are basically this version of Jedi. Mm-hmm. You can just limit the number of people who can be a knight in your party because it's sort of like a bloodline. It's like it's an inherited position. The Knights take new members like rarely, and it's a fading order.
Yeah.
So there's not going to be a lot of them. So you're not going to have a full party.
And even if you did, that means that you're giving up spellcasters, sorcerers.
Exactly. So
right?
Yeah, if you just
well, Shade's shaking his head. No.
No, there's nothing that restricts my favorite class is the bard.
Yeah.
There's nothing that restricts a bard from being this knight at all.
Lord Daniel, is that true?
Yes. Yeah. There's guidelines for who would become a knight.
Gotcha.
But anyone could be a Knight of Solamnia. But if you're going to play a caster, then you should be a Wizard of High Sorcery.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, okay. Well, it sounds like then that there is sort of, a lot of different opinions about some of the mechanics that have been brought in, but that the big ones that are being brought in are these new sort of background features and a little bit of the benefits and detractions that kind of are placed upon characters to choose them. So is there anything else mechanically that this setting / module introduces as that is kind of new when it comes to
Well, you want
D&D?
to talk about the lunar sorcery subclass and the mages of high sorcery. So we talked about this before, but the mages of high sorcery are basically the three orders of mages.
Yes.
White robes who use their magic for good and the betterment of everyone. The black robes, which are pretty much like you're aligned with evil.
Yeah.
And then the red robes who strive to maintain a balance between the two other forces.
But I remember you also saying that like if magic is ever threatened, that they're all like fuck all of these,
Magic first,
yeah, exactly.
Personal ambition second.
Yeah.
And that's how they've stayed the order for as long as they have. Also, I believe in this setting there were 5 towers of high sorcery, which is how they and then 3 were destroyed in the Cataclysm, which was the world-shattering event that happened before.
Yeah.
1's cursed, and then the Tower of Wayreth is the one where all of the wizards now. So these 3 different orders with all their different ideas have to be together. So they have to work for the magic first, and then for the good, evil, and balance second.
Gotcha. Okay, and then how does this sort of lunar sorcery class / feature section?
What's fun about it is it's attached to the phase of the moon. I think it's full, new, and crescent. And basically every long rest, you decide which phase of the moon is going to be until your next long rest.
Gotcha.
Which allows you to sort of play with the utility of sorcerers a little bit, because each phase gives you access to a spell that you can cast for free without a spell slot. That changes based on the phase of the moon. So you can kind of like choose to move around and have a different sort of free spell.
Gotcha.
And I believe there's also like a feat that lets you do it just in an adventuring day, but only once.
Yeah. And
only if you haven't already cast your phase of the moon spell. So you can't cast the phase of the moon in full and then switch to half and cast again. You can just change it on the fly. So
does this also give the DM the ability to kind of affect spellcasters based on? No. So it's sort of like a choice that the player is making.
Right. Yeah. The thing that this reminded me of was the Eladrin, the elves that are very Fey-like and attached to the seasons.
Yeah.
I think they've reworked the Eladrin since Mordekainen's Tome of Monsters, but originally in 5e, each day, it might still be this way, I apologize. Each day, though, each long rest, you choose, am I feeling summery today? Am I feeling springy, wintry?
Gotcha.
And this is very much the same thing, where today is a crescent moon day. And so it gives you some prepared casting, sort of, for sorcerers, which is a big thing, because that's not the case for sorcerers. They're not prepared casters. unless I've forgotten something.
No, they cast at will. I do believe they have to prepare their spells for the day.
Do they? Okay, I thought they had like a set list. I apologize.
No. They still have to learn. I think the difference is that they learn less spells.
Yeah,
but they don't have to prepare them. They can cast with
right.
their slots.
So they're not prepared casters.
And these,
right,
just again to like for the first level, full moon, you get shields. New moon, it's ray of sickness. Crescent moon, it's color spray. So you decide which one of those extra spells you're
into
most useful to you for that day.
All right,
you can take those, and then I believe they've also put some extra stuff in here based on your robes, but of course I didn't prep right before this.
But that's not for the that's for the order, not
that's for the background,
correct,
not the lunar. Okay, that's different. So
yeah,
never mind.
So it sounds like it does give a lot of like setting specific character customization that could be very fun to play around with.
Yeah,
and that I think you should steal for any setting.
Yeah.
Well, except for the Knights, Squire.
Steal it if you want.
But let's talk a little bit then about everything else in the book. So we've kind of talked about the setting, we've talked about the backgrounds and some of the character mechanics that are put in there.
Yeah.
Is there like, is there any monsters? Is there anything like that in here? Or is that going to be sort of in a supplemental expansion?
So one of the things that they've put in here is a character from the books that I won't reveal. Because it's actually like a big bad evil guy who you're not supposed to deal with directly, or really know that they're around. But
Steve's back.
Steve.
So they give you some good like campaign color too, because there's these characters that are fighting the war that your level 1 character is not going to deal with, but are going to be affected. Their actions are going to affect the world, so you'll be seeing them move around as you play.
Cool. And so then also it comes with like a intro kind of adventure, correct? What levels are in that adventure?
It sets you up from 1st to 10th.
Okay.
But you can kind of like pick where you want to go. The different preludes from the 2nd chapter sort of set you up for all of the different paths you can follow.
And have you guys kind of delved into that adventure? What's the feel of it? Is it very combat focused? Is it like
I've avoided it because I really want someone to run this book for me.
Okay.
I found this adventure enjoyable. So this is similarly to when Tim and I talked about Spelljammer, my opinion was, hey, this shouldn't have been divided between 3 books.
Yeah.
Hey, this, doesn't feel robust enough. I don't feel as much about this. It is 1 book. It feels hefty enough and complete. But the big thing that I liked about the Spelljammer release was the adventure. Yeah. The adventure was a lot of fun. And I will say this one's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
From what I've read of it seems like an adventure that I'm very excited to one day run for Daniel.
Yeah.
We did it, gang. The podcast has paid off.
But yeah, there's a lot of there's cool characters. I think they've done a good job of putting forward kind of the set dressing of the war and what's going on. And I'm sure that there are things to nitpick at and be upset by, because we're nerds and that's what nerds do.
But you haven't felt that as the overriding emotion?
No, I haven't. This is a fun book, and it meets most of what I would want out of this book personally.
Yeah. Cool. So from somebody who has no real experience within the Dragonlance setting, it sounds like if I were to buy this book, I'm going to get a bunch of, sort of background lore and sort of an intro to the world. I'm going to get a couple really interesting sort of like backgrounds and some new sort of tactics and mechanics that are going to be introduced with those different opportunities, along with some role-playing prompts because of like the way that the red robes interact with the world, or the Solemnites. What are they?
Solamnia.
The butchers of salami. What they do. And it also sounds like I will be able to sit down with a table either as a player or as a DM and really get my party really into the world. Basically 1 through 10 is like you guys becoming heroes, and then it's basically gonna shunt you out the other side as being able to take a big part in the world, the war that is happening, as like the DM, and like your party kind of starts interacting with that on a larger scale. So it sounds like it's like a perfect intro into this bigger setting that's available.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I'm satisfied with this book.
Yeah, it'll get you to level 10 or like 11, depending on if you like to do everything.
Yeah.
And then after that, you're off to the races. You can make whatever you want to happen.
Cool. So our final question, whenever we like talk about these books, is sort of like, do we think that this book is something you really want in your library as either a player or as a DM? Is it something that you think you don't need to have it in your library, you could borrow it from somebody? Or is it something that you're like, I'm just going to pass on this one's not for me? What do you guys think?
Well, I need it. I needed it.
You roll need immediately.
I roll for need. Yeah. But again, like if you've been a follower of the novels since the 80s, and have been keeping up with like the new novels that are coming out, it's definitely like part of the overall Dragonlance collection that you should have.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like because when we did the Spelljammer, you and Tim were sort of like, as people who love Spelljammer, it is a need immediately.
Yeah.
So it sounds like from the Dragonlance fan side, this is a great addition to your collection. From somebody who's a little bit less involved or invested in Dragonlance Shade, what do you think?
I think it's a fun adventure. I think it has the makings of getting you set up in a world. And really, I think the deciding factor for anyone is that this book has an item in the Magic Items, Gear and Magic Items section called Gnome Flinger. And that should be enough to tell you.
Amazing. I think that for me, from what it sounded like, it really sounds to me like, if I am interested in a medieval fantasy setting, and that is something that really, like yanks my crank, that I want to sit down and play like, a year in the setting, this is a for sure, I need this because it's going to really introduce me into a world where we can do this, especially if I'm introducing new players where we're not, we basically don't have to homebrew all of that. It's just going to be provided for us. And then, like I said, at the end, it's going to kick you out and you're going to be able to finish a more customized, campaign with your group. It sounds like if somebody is more like, where's the steampunk and where's the, electric guns or whatever.
That's Eberron, go away.
Yeah, it might be like so it sounds like this is very much dependent on, is this a setting that you, like a setting genre that you really are into, and
also,
if so.
Mount Nevermind exists, and we didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
But it'll get you your steampunk right away.
I did
Mount
immediately
Nevermind?
Think about the fact that gnomes are doing all sorts of steampunky shit, aren't they?
So gnomes are usually given a life quest, and that usually involves making things explode for decades until they invent something great. But the gnome flinger is one of those things. Also, they have a Fargab machine.
Yes.
It's a backpack radio.
I didn't know about this.
Yeah.
I knew there was a little bit of a steampunky-ish element with the gnomes and stuff, but it literally uses the words radio waves in this item's description, and that blew my silly little mind because I was just like, this is not what I expected when I read this book.
Honestly, it kind of sounds like what they were doing is like, let's do medieval fantasy and let's do World War I.
Yeah. Medieval World War I. 1920s set in the 1300s.
See also the works of J.R.R. Tolkien.
Yeah.
Well, it's just because the thing about it, Shade, is like you were talking about when you're traversing the wasteland and everything, and then ballista just being rained down upon you, very much like mortar fire, and like these, like backpack radios where you can set up positions and then communicate with like other regiments and stuff like that. Especially if you're in the later parts of campaign or kicked out into what you want to do. I guess my last question, now that we're kind of talking about the war aspect, is that does it have any info or some sort of guidance in running larger scale conflict?
Not that I've seen in this book.
Okay.
This book is about a party of adventurers
Yeah.
dealing with specific issues. So it doesn't really go into like the wargaming aspect.
There's elements of that,
Yeah.
like the war is happening around you, but I agree. I didn't see anything, and maybe on a more thorough read through, I'll catch something. But it's very much, if you look at the macro battle, that doesn't exist too much. It's happening around you, and you're in the micro battle.
Interesting. That's very cool. All right. Well, it sounds like I am ready to delve into Dragonlance. It sounds like this book is something that I'm going to either need to borrow or buy. And it sounds like Shade is running this campaign soon. And also, because it is all digital Wizards of the Coast, it's all probably accessible via D&D Beyond, correct?
Certainly.
It goes live, I believe, December
Tomorrow,
6th.
folks.
Awesome.
Tomorrow as of the time of this recording.
Yes. So last week, but yeah, it's available now.
Last week, I forgot what time it is.
So if you're looking
We
to...
have a device of time journeying here in the studio.
If you're looking to get your DM, like, subtly hint, hey, maybe this is the next thing we should do. Maybe a great Christmas gift or a holiday surprise or end of the year surprise for your DM or party as a hint at what's to come.
Honestly, yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, that sounds great, and we'll talk to you guys very soon. We'll see you later.
Merry holidays.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you all for listening to another episode of Tabletop. My name is Nick Perrin. I'm the host here. If you'd like to get in touch with any of us, including me, head to our website, tabletoppod.com. We have a contact form there that goes straight to our personal emails. And everyone, if you could do me a huge favor, if you enjoyed the episode, tell some folks. Go down into your podcast app and write a quick review. I will read any new review that comes in the new year. I promise. Feel free to use that for good or for evil. You can write literally anything, and I will just be forced to read it. So feel free to do that now. If you would also like to share the episode with some of your friends, it is the best way for the podcast to gain new community members. And if you are interested in supporting the show, we do have a Patreon, we have a Discord. All of these things are at our website. Again, that is tabletoppod.com. All right, everyone, I hope you have a wonderful week.